My name is Nathaniel Pierce. 22 years on the force, and I've learned one thing. The worst things that happen in a police station don't always happen out on the street. They happen inside. When the lights buzz too loud, when the coffee tastes metallic, and when the same hallway feels just a few inches longer than it used to. It started on a Monday. Always a Monday. The air in the precinct was thick. Rain outside, radiator heat inside, that smell of paper and sweat that never quite leaves an old building. The locker rooms sat at the end of the corridor past evidence intake, a space no one thought about until the end of shift. Rust on the pipes, tiles the color of old bone, lockers dented from decades of use. Routine. That was the word. Except routine doesn't explain the sound that came from inside that morning. It was faint, a tap-tap, like metal against metal. I was the first one in. The others trickled in late after a long weekend. I remember setting down my thermos, hearing it again, tap tap tap, rhythmic, deliberate. "Anyone in here?" I called out. Nothing. The room smelled wrong, cleaning solution and something else, something sweet and stale. The sound stopped when I stepped closer to the row of lockers near the back wall. Then, just as I reached them, a single metallic thud, like something inside shifted its weight. I told myself it was a loose shelf, maybe a rat. I'd tell myself a lot of things before this was over. By 8 a.m., the place was full again. Uniforms changing, boots thudding on tile, jokes bouncing off the walls. I didn't mention the noise. You learn not to. The last thing anyone wants is another story about Pierce hearing things. But by the end of the week, it wasn't just me. Rodriguez, 2 years on patrol, sharp kid, said he heard music one morning. Low, muffled, like a radio stuck between stations. Coming from one of the lockers. He couldn't tell which. Then Jenkins swore he found his lock already open when he came in. Nothing missing, but his uniform was folded. Neater than he'd ever left it. No one said much. We all laughed it off, tired cops playing tricks on each other. Still, a few of them started avoiding the room after hours. By Thursday, someone reported a smell. "Captain sent me down to check," said the janitor had complained. It hit before I even opened the door, metal, mold, and something faintly human beneath. The locker near the end, number 27, had a dark stain running down its vents. Dry at the edges, fresh near the bottom. I pried it open with my penknife. Nothing inside but a folded towel. White, but stiff and gray around the corners. I lifted it, and underneath were photographs. Old film prints, black and white, edges curled from moisture. Each one was of a man sleeping, uniform shirt, badge visible, the lockers behind him identical to these. Same room. Same angle. Different men. And one of them was me. I don't remember that photo being taken. Hell, I don't remember ever sleeping here. I took the photos to the captain's office, dropped them on his desk. He stared at them too long before speaking. "Who found these?" "I did. Locker 27. He frowned. "That one's empty. Always has been. Belonged to a guy named Keller, retired 5 years ago." I looked at him. "You sure?" He nodded, but his eyes didn't meet mine. Then he gathered the photos into a file and said, "Leave it. I'll handle it." And that was the end of it. Officially. Unofficially, I went back that night. The precinct after hours feels like a different building. Every sound stretches, every shadow looks longer. The locker room was empty, lights off, one flickering above the showers. I checked the lock. 27 was closed again, sealed tight. But someone had left a boot print in the dust near the bench. Fresh. Small. Not mine. On the bench lay a new photograph. Same framing, same room. Only this time the man sleeping wasn't me. It was Rodriguez. Taken that same afternoon. And behind him, in the reflection of a locker door, someone else. Standing where I was now. Head turned toward the camera. Expression unreadable. But the face looked a little too familiar. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying that photo in my head, Rodriguez asleep on the bench, that blurred reflection behind him. It wasn't just familiar. It was me. Same stance, same jacket, even the way I hold my shoulders, slightly tilted, from an old injury. But I never took that picture. At least, I don't remember taking it. The next morning, I went in early again. The hallway smelled like burnt coffee and paper toner. I tried to act normal, but it felt like the building was watching me back. When I passed the locker room door, I noticed it was closed, locked from the inside. That door never locked. Maintenance? I asked the janitor later. He shook his head. Didn't touch it, sir. Didn't even have the key. I didn't say anything, but the unease stuck to me all day. At noon, I called in a favor from the tech guy, Kevin, the kind of kid who spends his breaks soldering old cameras for fun. Pull the footage from the locker room, I said. He blinked. That's restricted access. I know. Just humor me. He came by a few hours later, holding a USB drive like it was evidence. Here, he said quietly. You didn't get this from me. We watched the footage on my office monitor. Timestamped, Tuesday morning, around 7:10 a.m., the time I heard the tapping. Empty room. Then, a flicker. For one frame, a person. The freeze frame showed a figure in uniform, standing near locker 27, head slightly bowed. Could have been anyone, except the frame after that showed an empty room again. No movement, no blurred trail, just gone. Kevin frowned. Could be a glitch. Could be, I said. But my stomach knew better. We scrubbed through Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, same thing. Short bursts of static, then half seconds of missing time. Every single gap happened between 6:55 and 7:15 a.m. Exactly when I was in there. By then, rumors had started spreading. Rodriguez stopped showing up on time. Jenkins changed lockers. Someone drew a cross and marker over number 27. That's when the captain called me in again. He looked tired, red eyes, shirt wrinkled like he hadn't gone home. Pierce, he said, drop this. You're spooking the whole squad. Someone's in our building taking pictures of us. That doesn't spook you? He exhaled. It's not your case. It's internal affairs now. That was the moment I knew something was wrong. He wasn't just annoyed, he was scared. When I asked who was handling it, he said a name I didn't recognize. Agent Lowell. Never heard of him. That night, the lights in the locker room stayed on. No one admitted leaving them that way. When I checked the camera feed again, the live footage was gone, replaced by static. But in the reflection of the metal benches, faint outlines still moved. Like shadows trying to decide what shape to take. I decided to confront whoever Agent Lowell was. I found him the next day, tall, thin, wearing a gray suit that didn't fit right. No badge, just a printed pass that said Internal Oversight Division. He asked me to walk with him. Down the hall, past the break room, past the noise of the precinct, until we reached the locker room door. He opened it without a key. Inside, it smelled like damp air and ozone. The lights buzzed like angry flies. Mind telling me what this is really about? I asked. Lowell smiled thinly. You're a thorough man, Pierce. That's what got you here. Got me where? He didn't answer. He just nodded toward locker 27. The door was open. Inside was a new envelope. Unmarked. I opened it. A single photograph slid out, glossy, fresh, still smelling of developer fluid. It showed the two of us standing right here, looking into locker 27. Same clothes, same angle, same lighting. Taken just seconds ago. I looked up, but Lowell was already gone. The locker door creaked closed by itself. I spent the next day pretending I wasn't rattled. Routine helps. Routine lies. Coffee. Notes. Interviews. Everything looked the same, except for the locker room. The door stayed open now, like it wanted me to look. I walked past it 3 times before finally stepping in. Nothing had changed. The smell of metal, the faint hum of the fluorescent lights, the dripping pipe near the sink. Only one thing was different. Locker 27 was empty. Completely stripped. Not even the ID tag on the vent slot. Rodriguez's spare shirt, the cross someone drew, gone. I pulled up the duty logs and checked who had been in after me and Lowell. No one. Security swipe data showed no entry for that door at all. Not mine. Not his. That shouldn't be possible. If we'd gone in, it would have registered. And yet, nothing. I leaned back in my chair, eyes burning from the monitor's glow. For a second, I thought I heard that same faint tapping again. But this time, it wasn't coming from the locker room. It was coming from my desk drawer. Inside was an evidence bag I hadn't logged. Inside the bag, another photograph. A hallway. Ours. Taken from waist height, the kind of shot you'd get if you were just walking and clicking a shutter without looking. Blurred movement at the end of the hall, a silhouette. It looked like Lowell. But the timestamp was from 2 days before I met him. That night, I drove to the archives building downtown. I needed to know who this guy was. If he even existed in the system. The clerk on duty, Reynolds, quiet guy, chain smoker, looks half asleep, typed the name into the personnel registry. No. Agent Lowell. No. Internal Oversight Division. Not in any department. Not in the federal database either. I asked him to check building access history. He hesitated, but curiosity won. After a minute, he looked up at me and said, "Funny thing, your access badge lists 2 entries for yesterday." 2? I frowned. One at 7:08 a.m., locker room. And one at the same time. He turned the screen so I could see. Both scans were identical, same timestamp, same ID, same location. Like I'd entered the room twice at the exact same second. I left without saying a word. The air outside felt too thin, like I'd stepped out of sync with the world for a moment. When I got home, the envelope was waiting on my doorstep. Plain. Unmarked. Inside, another photo. This one was of my apartment. Taken through the window. I was in it, sitting at my desk, head bowed, looking at a photograph. The blinds had been closed. I didn't sleep. Didn't move. Just sat there, listening to the house breathe. At 3:12 a.m., my phone buzzed. Blocked number. I answered. No voice. Just the faint click of a camera shutter. I hung up. 5 minutes later, another buzz, a message this time. No text, just an image. It was the same photo again. But this time, in the reflection of the window, there was a figure behind me. Someone in uniform. The next morning, I went to the captain. He didn't even let me finish. "You're off the case, Pierce. Take a week. Clear your head." He handed me a slip, forced leave, pending evaluation. I stared at it, then at him. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Something about his expression told me he wasn't protecting me. He was protecting himself. I left my badge on his desk. By the time I reached the street, the morning light looked strange, flat, like the contrast had been drained out of the world. My reflection in the window of the precinct seemed delayed. Half a second behind me. That was when I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit. Whatever was happening in that building, whatever was watching through the camera lens, it wasn't just observing us anymore. It was recording the idea of us. That night, unable to stop myself, I went back to the precinct. The parking lot was empty. The doors were locked. But locker room windows were faintly glowing blue, like the old fluorescent lights inside were still on. When I peered through the glass, I saw my own locker, door wide open. Inside, something was hanging from the hook. My uniform. Pressed, clean, and waiting. I broke back into my own precinct. That's not something I ever thought I'd do, but standing in the parking lot at 2 a.m., I realized I didn't have a choice. The badge reader still accepted my credentials. The door clicked open like it had been waiting for me. The building was dark. The kind of dark that eats the edges of your vision, where your footsteps sound louder than they should. I didn't turn on the lights. Didn't want anyone, or anything, knowing I was there. The plan was simple: go to my desk, pull every report filed under my name for the last 48 hours, and prove someone was forging them. But when I reached the records room, the lights were already on. Files covered the main table, open, stacked, scattered. All stamped with my signature. Each one perfectly filled out in my handwriting. I checked the timestamps. 2, sometimes 3 reports per day. All written after I'd been placed on leave. They described interviews I hadn't done, statements from witnesses I'd never met, scenes I'd never seen. Each one referenced the locker room incident, as if it were an ongoing investigation. In every report, Detective Pierce was listed as primary investigator. I sat down, scanning through pages, flipping them faster and faster until my hands shook. And then I noticed something worse. On the margins of each document, faintly visible under the overhead light, tiny notations made in pencil. Same handwriting. But these weren't case notes. They were directions. Repeat tomorrow at 0700. Mirror placement correct. Lighting matches prior sequence. Next phase, photo reproduction. I flipped another page. Another note. Ensure subject unaware of duplication. I froze. The word subject was underlined twice. I heard a sound, soft, deliberate. A door clicking open down the hall. Someone else was here. I turned off the light, moved toward the corner, trying to steady my breathing. From the hallway came a faint shuffle of shoes, then a man's voice. Calm. Flat. Detective Pierce? I didn't answer. The voice came again, closer this time. You shouldn't be here after hours. When the figure stepped into view, I recognized him instantly. Lowell. Same gray suit, same thin smile. Only now, he was holding something, a file folder. He placed it on the table without looking at me. Your reports are impressive, he said. I didn't write those. He tilted his head, almost amused. Of course you did. Every word matches your hand. I stepped forward. Who are you? He didn't answer. Instead, he opened the folder. Inside was a single sheet of paper. A new report. Case ID 47B3. Subject Detective Pierce. Status Active observation. Last entry Ongoing. And under. Filed by. The signature. Pierce D. My throat went dry. I didn't file this. He looked up, eyes calm, almost pitying. Maybe not this time. I grabbed the folder, backed away. The room suddenly felt smaller, like the walls were folding in. What are you doing here? I demanded. Lowell didn't move. Completing documentation. We can't stop halfway through, can we? He glanced at the stack of reports. It's almost finished. What is? He smiled faintly. The replication. He turned and left, his footsteps fading into the hallway. I ran after him, but when I reached the corridor, it was empty. The exit door was closed. The air smelled like dust and old chemicals. I returned to the records room. The folder was still on the table. But now there was another photo lying next to it, one that hadn't been there before. It showed the records room itself. Shot from the corner where I'd been hiding a minute ago. I was in it, half-shadowed, looking straight into the lens. The timestamp read, 2:17 a.m. Exactly 1 minute ago. Something inside me cracked then. Not panic, not yet, but a cold, precise understanding that I was being documented in real time. Whoever, or whatever, was doing this didn't just want to watch. It wanted to replace. I burned the reports. Every single page. Smoke filled the room, the sprinklers screamed, alarms went off. And I ran. By the time I reached the parking lot, the night air felt like freedom. But as I turned back toward the building, I saw movement in one of the windows. A figure in uniform, standing perfectly still, watching me go. Same posture. Same build. Same face. By the time the fire alarm stopped, I was already halfway across town. I didn't remember driving. Just the lights blurring past, the engine whining, my hands still shaking on the wheel. When I finally parked, I realized I'd come to the one place I shouldn't have, the administrative archives. The heart of the department. Where everything about everyone ends up eventually. Inside, it was silent. Not abandoned, just quiet in that way only government buildings can be, the hum of ventilation, the steady pulse of fluorescent lights, paper on paper. The clerk on duty, not Reynolds this time, a woman I didn't know, barely looked up. Need something, detective? Personnel record, I said. Name? Pierce. Daniel. Badge number 32417. She typed it in. Her fingers moved lazily across the keys. Then she stopped. Which one? I felt the air go cold. What do you mean, which one? She turned the screen toward me. 2 entries. Same name. Same badge. Different precinct codes. The first listed me as active, on administrative leave. The second, active, reassigned to Division 7B. Reassigned. The transfer date was yesterday. Signed and approved by Captain Harris. My captain. I drove back to the precinct just before dawn. The air was heavy with that gray stillness before sunrise. Everything looked washed out, cars, windows, even the flag outside the building hung limp. I didn't use the front entrance. I knew every side door, every blind spot. Old habits. The corridor lights flickered on automatically as I passed. Everything was too quiet. No chatter, no motion. But on the bulletin board by the break room, someone had pinned a new roster list. My name was still there. Pierce, D. Next to it. Shift, 0700 to 1900. Locker number 27. I should have left. But instead, I went back down that hallway one last time. The locker room door stood open. Lights spilled out in a steady hum. And there, hanging from the hook inside locker 27, my uniform, freshly pressed, with my badge clipped to the breast pocket. On the bench sat a folder. The same 10 folder I'd burned hours ago. I opened it. Inside were reports, again, all filled out, dated for the next 7 days. Interviews scheduled. Cases assigned. All signed, Detective Pierce, Division 7B. I flipped to the last page. It wasn't a report. It was a transcript. Interview subject Pierce Daniel. Location, locker room, Central Precinct. Status, ongoing. Notes, observation complete. Replacement successful. The air in the room shifted. The hum of the lights deepened, a low vibration that seemed to crawl up through the tiles. I turned. Someone stood in the doorway. Same uniform. Same posture. Same everything. He looked at me with calm, steady eyes I knew better than my own reflection. For a moment neither of us spoke. Then he smiled. Just a small, practiced curve of the mouth. You left your badge behind. His voice was even, familiar, professional. He reached out, holding it toward me. And as I looked down at the badge in his hand, I realized it was still warm, as if he'd been wearing it. I don't remember what happened next. Just the sound of the lights buzzing overhead. The faint metallic click of a locker door closing. And then silence. They found a report later that week. Filed under my name. It described a containment breach in the Central Precinct, unauthorized access, destruction of property. It concluded with subject neutralized. Replacement operational. No mention of where I went. No mention of Lowell. No mention of any photographs. The file was stamped confidential, internal use only. And at the bottom, under, filed by Pierce D.